Hey, I am at the Buffalo Soldier Museum located at Fort Sill Army Base, Oklahoma. Well, I'm actually not there now, but this is where I took that picture. And behind me is a full life replica of a soldier from the Ninth Cavalry United States Army and his horse. They were the mounted cavalry known as the Buffalo Soldiers. And I want to tell you a story today about the Buffalo Soldiers. It was 1866. Civil War is over with, and Congress was so impressed with the service rendered by the troops of the United States colored troops that they decided to form six regular Army units for African American soldiers. They were the 38th, 39th, the 40th, the 41st. Those would be infantry units, and then the 9th and 10th cavalry units. And these would be regular Army units. Okay. Later on, the 38th, 39th, 40th, and 41st Army units would be combined and collapsed down to the 24th and 25th Infantry. The enlistment for the cavalry was a 5-year commitment. For the infantry, it was a 3-year commitment. And the pay for a private was $13 per month. Now, a regiment consisted of a colonel, lieutenant colonel, 3 majors, and a chaplain. That was at the regimental level. And then you would have at the regiment or company level, you would have a captain, first and second lieutenant, you would have first sergeant, 4 other sergeants, 3 corporals, 1 trumpeter, 1 blacksmith, 2 furriers, and 1 saddler. And then you would have, 50 to 55 privates who were composed of that regiment. Now, black men were first enlisted and trained to serve in the regular army at Camp William Penn. Remember, this was not the United States troops. This was not the United States colored troops anymore. This was the United States Army. This was the regular army, and it was a way of bringing economic stability to your family. A black man could get steady pay and a good job and the ability to rise up through the ranks. This was one, I dare say, one of the first professions that a black man could get, professional soldier. Now, as people moved west, the United States Army Buffalo Soldiers went with them, protecting the Western Plains territories. They were territories. The railroads were extending west, like the Kansas Pacific Railroad, and workers and everything that was involved in building out the new infrastructure needed to be protected. It was the Western Plains, Comanche and Apache Indians who bestowed, because of their courage, determination, and bravery, who bestowed upon these African American soldiers the moniker Buffalo Soldier. One of the most famous Buffalo Soldiers is a man named Henry O. Flipper, who was the first African American to graduate from West Point. He did that in 1877. The Buffalo Soldiers' history is storied. They have collected more than 400 medals, including 19 medals of honor in more than 170 engagements. They were involved in the Indian Wars, the Spanish American War, and World War One. And most people don't know this, but Buffalo Soldiers were some of the first park rangers in America. I mean, after all, they knew the landscape, they knew the territories, they were already out there. Buffalo Soldiers were involved at the Battle of San Juan Hill. That's probably one of the most famous Spanish American War battles because of then Colonel Teddy Roosevelt. Now, he first gave them high praise for their actions in battle. But then later, when he was running for president, he reversed his opinion of them, saying that they shirked their duties. Meanwhile, factually speaking, what got left out of that was Colonel Roosevelt did not get to the top of San Juan Hill until all of the fighting was over with. But all you see are pictures of him with his troops on the battle on the top of San Juan Hill. Oh, and by the way, you don't see any Buffalo Soldiers in any of those pictures, but I assure you they were there. The Buffalo Soldiers are the only military unit in the history of America's military to be turned over or placed under the command of a foreign government. That was done by President Woodrow Wilson, big shocker. Um, he put them under the command of the French in World War One. The last Buffalo Soldier died when he was 101 years old. His name is Mark Matthews. He is buried in Arlington National Cemetery. He died in 2005, and he is in section 69, grave marker 4215, if you want to go and pay your respects to him. But it's Women's History Month, and I want to tell you about a Buffalo soldier named William Cathay, or Kathy, depending on how it's written. William Cathay was born, or Cathay was born enslaved in 1844 in Independence, Missouri. Now, in 1861, as the Union forces occupied Jefferson City and they captured enslaved persons, remember, if you look back at one of the videos that we've done, truth be told, video about Fort Monroe, it's called The Contraband, you'll get a clearer and more deeper understanding of what contraband were. But in simple terms, an army that captures property from another army during wartime, that property is considered contraband. And since enslaved persons were considered property, when the Union Army took over any particular place, battlefield, town, city, or whatever, the enslaved persons there would then be considered contraband of war, and they would not be returned to their owners or their captors. So many of these enslaved persons would then go on to serve the Union Army in various roles. William served as a cook, as a washwoman. Wait a minute, a washwoman? Really? Okay, because he's William Cathay, and he's a man serving as a washwoman. Well, on November 15th, 1866, William Cathay enlisted in the United States Army. Now, that is a very honorable and brave thing for any man, except William Cathay was not a man. She was a woman. Her birth name was Cathay Williams, or Cathay Williams. She changed her name. She put her last name first, she put her first name last, so that she could join the Army. And she joined the U.S. Army in the 38th United States Infantry, which was an infantry regiment of the Buffalo Soldiers. She's the first female to enlist and serve as a man in the United States Army. She's the only documented that we know of. She's the only known female Buffalo soldier that we know of. And she performed well as any other soldier. In fact, she earned the Good Conduct Medal for her service, which means that she did all of what a good soldier is supposed to do. However, shortly after she enlisted, she contracted smallpox. Smallpox swept through the Western Territories. So she was hospitalized, but then later she rejoined her unit, and their first posting was at Fort Riley, Kansas. And after her bout with smallpox later on, the entire company moved 500 miles to Fort Union, which is in northeastern New Mexico. Now imagine they walked that. They didn't get on the, we get on do some half trucks, and they would move us wherever we needed to go, or whatever transportation was. They walked, they marched that 500 miles to Fort Union. Imagine that. And during that time, cholera swept through the territories and the company. When they arrived at Fort Union, the post surgeon banned them from the fort, and he made them quarantine in a garrison out on the prairie, so they couldn't even get inside the fort. After a brief stay, they marched another 350 some odd miles to Fort Cummings. And that's now in southwest New Mexico. And by the way, let me say, the Buffalo Soldiers are part and parcel behind the way that New Mexico was able to eventually go from a territory to a state. But that's a video for another day. Now, William Cathay had 2 more stints with illness. And it was not long after that In the hospital, the surgeon made the astounding discovery that William Cathay is in fact not a man but a woman. Shortly afterwards, she was given um, a medical and honorable discharge from the Army, and she lived the rest of her life in the West. Her last known location is Trinidad, Colorado, where she's believed to have lived and then died around 1893. And since the headstones then were all wooden, her headstone more than most likely deteriorated long ago, and thus her final resting place is to us unknown. Census records put her last known location in Trinidad, Colorado. Now, we wouldn't know her story at all. We wouldn't know her story because she was illiterate. She could not read or write. She signed her name with an X. But in 1867, a reporter from St. Louis, a St. Louis newspaper, heard about her and traveled to Colorado to meet her and interviewed her. And that's how we know her story. And she presented him with her initial enlistment papers and her final discharge papers as evidence of her claim that she served in the United States Army. And in fact, she did, because her commanding officer wrote about her. Just no one knew that she was a woman. Now, why is she notable? Why is she a hero? Over 400 women served in the Civil War, posing as men and the like. But she is the first and only woman that we know of who enlisted in the regular army and served in the regular army, posing as a man, and the only known female Buffalo soldier that we know of. Well, I'll tell you, I was in the military and I had two MOSs. MLS means military occupational specialty. When I first joined the military, I was an air defense artillery crewman. I did basic at Fort Bliss, Texas. Later on in my military career, I changed my MOS and became a military police officer. Now, when we deployed to Saudi Arabia during the first Gulf War, big shocker now, when a unit gets called up and deployed for war, everybody doesn't always show up. I was one of the guys on the team whose job was to go around and give people a ride, just in case you didn't have a ride, here to pick you up. And yeah, in case you hadn't heard, there's a war afoot. We're being deployed, and so that was my job. And these guys, they had all joined and enlisted. Nobody was conscripted. Nobody was drafted of their own free will. They had joined, and we had to go and get them. And all I'm saying is, now back in the 1800s, this woman who couldn't read or write, and yet she raised her hand and she swore the oath, and she picked up a weapon and she stood a post, and she did it so well, receiving the Good Conduct Medal. And the only reason why she was discharged is because of her health. Now, the reporter asked her about why she was motivated to join the Army, and she said simply she wanted to provide for herself. I guess she didn't see a whole lot of options. She was born enslaved and she was now free, and she did not want to be a burden to anyone, and she wanted to make her own living. So that's why I think she is notable, and that's why I think she is a hero, and that's why I think she should be touted, and her story should be told. In a world where she was at the bottom of the social and economic ladder in every way, she found a way to serve her country and serve herself. Now, there are no known pictures of Cathay Williams, only artist conceptions. Now, this is the one I really like. So, thank you, Cathay Williams, for your service, your sacrifice, and all that you did. Continue to rest in peace wherever you are. And to you, my dear sisters, wherever you are, Happy Women's History Month. You can find Black history anywhere, because our history is everywhere. Until next time.
If you would like to receive more videos like this, please like, subscribe, and hit the notification icon to receive our new releases. If you would like to assist Truth Be Told in our mission to preserve African American history, which is American history, please share this video with your children, family, and friends. Truth Be Told, you can find Black history anywhere because our history is everywhere.